my mom, Steph Curry. Stephanie, how are you feeling?
Good, very good.
I'm here with my cousin Grace. Grace, how are you feeling?
Feeling good.
I'm here with Rachel.
Hi.
We're going to be talking about the Regency era today.
The Regency era started in 1811 with the reign of Prince Regent, and then ended 9 years later in 1820 when George IV became King of England. Fashion was about emphasizing the natural figure. This era is most often associated with the Empire silhouette, named for the First French Empire under Napoleon. Fashion increasingly emulated the garments of antiquity as society looked to the ideals of ancient Greece and Rome. The neoclassical aesthetic was typically evident in women's fashion, as light-colored gowns with lower necklines, short sleeves, and high waistlines gained popularity. The style was often worn in white, which denoted a high social status. Men's fashion moved towards the conservative, tailored style that would set the tone for the rest of the century. Clothing then became a bit more structured, including different types of outerwear for women. Ready-made cloaks were available to purchase throughout England. Bright red cardinals became especially ubiquitous in the countryside. Even servants dressed in the styles of the time that were suitable to their social class. Servants typically wore normal clothing in durable printed or plain fabrics. Accessories like aprons, handkerchiefs, and sleeve covers were used to protect clothing. Women's dresses featured ruffle sleeves, hems, and necklines, as well as fuller skirts. This era gives us a glimpse of what high society was wearing in London and Paris. During this era, clothing had political and international implications. Over the span of 3 decades, fashion had shifted from an ornamented and opulent to minimalistic simplicity, and back again to showy and decorative. Women's main role in the Regency era was to make a fashion statement. Because they had elaborate styles, men didn't care to hear their thoughts, and the women thought they shouldn't have any. The Regency era style impacted many women's lives during that time. It was a way for them to express themselves. In the Regency era, women were married at a very young age. Manners were extremely important to be treated well. In this era, life was based on the idea that the men were superior to the women. Men were mostly presented to the public world while women were to stay in the domestic realm. Women spent their youth becoming more eligible for selective, rich, wife-seeking men. Men were the masters of the family and dealt with the money. The expectations of women were to be well-mannered and temperate, not to be smarter than men, which was viewed as unattractive, be educated in more feminine skills like singing, dancing, sewing, painting, reading, writing, basic math, and science. They needed to focus on improving these skills so they could be deemed more appealing to men. Families focused on growth of wealth and climbing up the social ladder. Marriage was the most important part of a woman's life because they depended financially on their future husband and was their family's way of gaining status. Men owned the land, house, and property, which was all passed down to the males of the family. Women were often left in poverty because they weren't given land after the death of their father or husband. Men made all the decisions with the money. Women didn't have freedom to do things like a man did. They had to be polite and compliant to the point of subordination. Women tended to live a leisurely domestic life because they were not enabled to do anything special except for sit in their homes and look pretty. Women in the upper class lived extremely luxurious lives but still oppressed. Middle class women were similar to upper class but less opulent and still oppressed. Women in the upper working class worked as bookkeepers or in shops and still were not given any rights. And the women in lower working class, greatly impoverished, typically single women, and expected to work hard for themselves. The role of women was determined by her class from the time that they were born. They had little to no alternative to what path she was given. In Pride and Prejudice, for example, Elizabeth Bennet contrasts societal norms. She thinks people should do what makes them happiest, despite her mother's wishes. She wants to not have to rely on her husband.
The Regency era. So I've printed out some photos for you to take a look at before we begin. If you want to take a look at those, and kind of we'll be talking about kind of the basic things like the gender roles and what you like about the outfits, things like that. From looking at these photos, do you think that they cared about their looks more than comfortability?
I'd say they cared more about their looks. Everything's very, very sort of, I would say, fancy. Like even the simple picture, there's detail to make the outfit, we'll say, more elevated or not. And it doesn't really look that comfortable.
Yeah, and I was talking about this with Grace. Like, they look kind of simple on the outside, but underneath you have like corsets and stuff like that, so it's like a whole thing. So yeah, I definitely agree they care more about their looks. First question I have for you, what do you like about the clothes in this era? Anything in particular?
I like the different uses of fabric that they had, different patterns at the end of the dresses, and how flowy they are. I like the flowiness and how it's like tighter at the top.
Yeah, one thing for me, I love the use of like accessories in it, like gloves and the hats and things like that. I think it's a really nice touch for me personally. Why do you think it was important to be so well dressed all the time?
Well, I feel back then, even as it is sort of like now, your social status is dependent on like your class or like your financial class, like your financial status. So the way that people would show that off is by buying fancy things like clothes. So it was really important to be well dressed because it showed that you were wealthy and that you were of a high like social status.
Exactly, and I'm gonna add on to that like it also shows that they kind of have respect for society. Being well dressed and putting a name out for yourself, you have respect for a whole society.
Yeah, or I guess like if you go to an event or something like that, like that you respect an event if you pay like $100 on a dress,
Exactly. Yeah. Next question, do you think that shows like Bridgerton accurately depict this era?
I think so, from the sense of sort of like the style of clothing that was worn at the time, and also just, that show is about a family of wealth, and so I think that the outfits that they've put would have been what a family of well-being at that time would probably have worn.
Upper class, things like that. But even like their servants were like well dressed too. That's the thing.
Well, then the question is, how much of that is accurate, or is that for us as an audience to see? I don't know.
It was pretty accurate actually, but it was just like their outfits are more vibrant and things like that. Like the servants were more toned down and white, but actually, I don't think it does accurately depict it because the dresses, if you were of upper class and had more wealth, then you would be wearing white to represent that.
Oh, and they have color.
Yeah, they do very vibrant. So I think they definitely put it on for the show.
Right.
Yeah.
More so, and I don't honestly recall that many of the men wearing the tights in the show.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Do you think that some of the outfits are impractical and why?
Yeah, probably for like physical activities. Like you have to like lift up your dress, and if they're walking outside, it's dragging on the dirt.
Yeah, because in the Regency era, it was like blasphemous to show forbidden to show your legs.
Yeah,
or something
it's
like
probably
that.
hot out, so.
Yeah, true. But also because they were wearing like corsets underneath, so it's kind of like.
Oh yeah, they have like a base.
Yeah.
Underneath.
Yeah. Okay, next question. What do you not like about the style in this era?
Well, from looking at the pictures, like, I think it's so beautiful. Like, I would wear it, and I think it's so, like, it looks so good. But then I also saw, like, underneath all that, there's just so many layers. And especially back then, like, clothes were really restricting for women, sort of. Like, it was weird because you had, like, women in that era had to fit a very small window of, like, they just had to fit in this very small window. Like, they couldn't be too provocative, but they cinched waist. Like,
I agree for sure. Like, I would wear these clothes every day if it was the Regency era. I would love it. And like, as somebody who's not physically active, like, I'll just sit all day and talk.
Wear the clothes.
Wear the clothes. Yeah, exactly. What do you think a badly dressed woman's reputation would be like in this era?
If you're badly dressed, what did people think your reputation was?
Yeah.
Probably that you didn't have any money, that you were poor, lower class, as we would call blue collar now, that you were the person who was working. Maybe you were the one that was working in a household as opposed to, living in the household.
Yeah, and also I also think that it kind of shows that they don't have respect for society, because being well dressed kind of shows that you're, in society and mingle with everybody, and if you don't look good, then people won't respect you.
And you don't fit in.
Exactly. You don't fit in. Okay, so last question. Do you think you would be able to wear these fancy dresses on a daily basis?
No. Maybe
Just flat out
occasionally.
no?
Like, occasionally I could wear it, but, like, I think that I'd just be very uncomfortable. If I had a corset underneath and then this, like, hot dress on top.
True. Like, to think that they dress like that every single day.
But they were probably, like, used to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like,
They
it's
didn't know any
definitely
different.
impractical. Like, to the point where it's actually, like, shaping their bodies like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
But they don't know any different, so.
They don't know any different. Okay, last question for you. Why do you think people only talk about the upper class when it comes to this era?
I feel like the upper class back then was really glamorized, when you hear, like, even now when we see, like, movies that take place back then, it's always from the view of, like, the rich people, because it seems so glamorous, and people want to watch something that they aspire to be, not something that makes them sad, or, like, that reminds them of their own life, which is why, like, the middle class, or, like, even lower classes never got showed, I don't think, because, like, I don't know, you strive for...
Even to a certain extent, like, low class and, like, even servants were dressed up in the Regency era style, but it just wasn't as extravagant as people in the upper class. So that's why, like, Bridgerton, like, they were so rich. It's actually crazy.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
like even shows like Downton Abbey, like, you're focusing on, like, the lives of the help, but you're watching it also, like, they're the lives of the help for, like, the most like the richest family,
Exactly. So their uniforms are gonna be a lot nicer than middle class servants. Yeah. My final question for you: do you think men cared more if a woman was well read or well dressed?
I think well dressed at this point, because again, I think, as we talked about, what you looked like presented where your status was within society. So regardless if you had read a book or not, if you came from a well-off family, you probably dressed the part. So I would expect, and then again, you want to have that lovely lady on your arm dressed really well to show that, you're in the right society as well. Yeah, definitely. And I was also thinking, like, my immediate kind of thought would be well dressed, because obviously that's, like, their whole thing for women, to be well dressed and be accepted in society and all that. But also being well read was actually something that was important to the men too, so they could kind of take care of the children and know that they were, like, educated almost, which was not very common. No, a lot of women were not educated.
So would you wear these clothes, or do you like them? I like them, but I don't think I would want to wear them, and that's mainly because I know what's going on underneath with all of the corsets and how you would be constricted and not able to breathe. Okay, so thank you for talking with me about the Regency era.
You're welcome.
Thanks for chatting with me.
No problem.
All right, well, thank you for talking with me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, so having discussions with everybody was really great. I was really impressed by some of their answers, and how engaged they were in the conversation. But also just talking about it and researching old films or period pieces and things like that kind of makes you think about how drastically different not only the societal norms and standards and women's rights, but fashion in general, how different it was to it now. It's extremely, extremely casual what we wear now, and there's different kinds of styles except for one style that everybody had to stick to. Everybody has a choice now of what they want to wear. more casual, more high-end, you know. Some people like to wear Regency era dresses now, and I think that's really cool, and I kind of fell in love with the dresses and the corsets and that old fashion. It was really beautiful, and I had a lot of fun researching for this project.